On a quiet August evening in 2013, a mother's worst fear became reality. Yoonmi Hoi wanted nothing more than to fix her broken relationship with her daughter, but instead, she faced a tragic and violent end. It wasn't just a family argument, it was something far more shocking. As the world struggled to understand what happened, one big question remained. Was this a crime driven by anger, or was there something much deeper at play? This case is about more than just murder. It's a story of family struggles, mental illness, and the search for justice. Isabella Guzman was born on June 5, 1995, in Aurora, Colorado, USA. She was the only child of her parents, but her childhood was far from easy. From a young age, she had serious behavioral issues that made it incredibly difficult for her parents to raise her. While we don't know the exact details of her behavior, it was bad enough that when she was just 7 years old, her mother, Yoonmi Hoi, made the tough decision to send her to live with her father, Robert Guzman. Her parents had divorced when she was 3, and like many children of divorce, she struggled with the changes. However, whatever was going on with Isabella seemed to go beyond just adjusting to a split household. After spending years living with her father, she eventually moved back in with her mother and stepfather, Ryan Hoi, when she was 14 years old. But instead of things getting better, they got worse. By August 2013, when Isabella was 18, her behavior had become increasingly volatile. Ryan later described how she had become openly disrespectful, aggressive, and even threatening toward her mother. Her outbursts had escalated to the point where Yoonmi was genuinely afraid of her own daughter. Even though she was scared, Yoonmi still wanted to fix their relationship. She hoped things would get better, but that never happened. The day after Isabella angrily spit at her mother, she sent a chilling email that said, "You will pay." The message was addressed to someone named Cecilia, which made it even more unsettling. Who was Cecilia? Was this a mistake, or was Isabella using a different name for her mother? Either way, Yoonmi felt it was a direct threat, and she knew she had to act. At this point, things had gotten so out of control that Yoonmi called the police, hoping they could step in and help. She didn't want to throw Isabella out, even though legally she could have, since she was now an adult. Instead, she wanted her daughter to understand that her actions had serious consequences. When the officers arrived, they tried to talk to Isabella, warning her that if she didn't start treating her mother with respect, she might have to leave the house. But Isabella showed almost no reaction. She sat there cold and emotionless, giving them nothing to work with. Feeling desperate and unsure of what else to do, Yoonmi turned to Isabella's father, Robert Guzman. She knew Isabella had always been closer to him and hoped that maybe he could get through to her. Maybe she would listen to him when she refused to listen to anyone else, but no one could have imagined what was about to happen. Robert later said he tried talking to Isabella, and to him the conversation seemed to go well. They sat in the backyard, discussing respect and how children should treat their parents. Robert believed that his talk with Isabella had made a difference, and that she had understood what he was trying to tell her. But in reality, nothing could change her mindset at that point. She was too far gone, and no one could get through to her. Hey friends, I noticed that 97% of you haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, please consider subscribing. It's free and really helps me out. I'd truly appreciate your support. Thank you. On August 28, 2013, around 9:30 p.m., Yoonmi came home from work and brought McDonald's for herself and Ryan. They talked for a while, and at one point she asked him if he had seen Isabella. He told her he hadn't seen her in about an hour. After talking for a bit, Yoonmi decided to go upstairs to take a quick shower. But within minutes, her worst nightmare unfolded. Not long after she went upstairs, Ryan heard loud banging noises coming from the bathroom, followed by a terrifying scream. At first, he thought Isabella was just hitting her mother with her fists, so he rushed upstairs to stop the fight. But when he got to the top of the stairs, he saw that the bathroom door was slightly open. Before he could do anything, Isabella suddenly pushed against the door and locked it from the inside. Now, he was helpless, standing outside, unable to get in. while the horrifying sounds continued. Then, to his horror, blood started seeping from under the door. That's when the panic truly set in. Ryan ran downstairs, grabbed his phone, and frantically called 911. He told the dispatcher that something terrible was happening, that blood was coming from under the bathroom door, and that the police had already been at their house earlier because of Isabella. Desperate, he ran back upstairs, trying to break down the door to save his wife, but it was too late. The last thing he heard was Yunmi's final word, Jehovah. Then, to his shock, Isabella suddenly opened the door. She stepped out, holding a bloody knife, her face completely emotionless. Ryan looked down and saw his wife on the floor, covered in blood. The dispatcher told him to start CPR, but he already knew there was no saving her. Her injuries were far too severe. Emergency medical service arrived at 10:16 p.m., just 11 minutes after his 911 call, and by 10:28 p.m., Yunmi was officially pronounced dead. The scene was horrific. Yunmi had been stabbed 79 times, 31 times in the face and 48 times in the neck and torso. A baseball bat was also found next to her body, suggesting she had been beaten as well. With Isabella nowhere in sight, police wasted no time launching a search for her. By early morning, the investigation was in full swing. Breaking news reports flooded in. Reporters were on the scene as police secured a search warrant for the house. Soon after, the authorities released a photo of Isabella Guzman. The search for her intensified, with police scanning the area and even deploying a Denver police helicopter to track her down. Police sent out a reverse 911 alert within a 1.5-mile radius, warning residents to be on the lookout for Isabella Guzman. Just after 10 p.m., they received a call about what was initially reported as a family disturbance. Officers arrived expecting a domestic issue, but they were shocked when a man met them at the door and told them there was a woman upstairs with multiple stab wounds. Tragically, she was pronounced dead at the scene, and the search for Isabella began immediately. Authorities issued a be-on-the-lookout alert for Isabella, warning the public that she was armed and dangerous. They attempted to track her cell phone, but she had turned it off, making the search even more difficult. It took 16 hours before they finally found her. On August 29th, around 2 p.m., she was discovered in an Aurora parking garage. Officers were led there by a tip from someone who reported seeing a body in the back of a Jeep. It turned out to be Isabella, asleep and covered in her mother's blood. When officers arrived, she was no longer in the Jeep but standing nearby. A knife and a backpack with her belongings were found outside the vehicle. She was still wearing the same blood-stained outfit she had on during the murder, a pink sports bra and turquoise shorts. Surveillance footage also showed Isabella entering an H-Mart bathroom after the crime, where she interacted with shoppers while covered in blood. Instead of calling 911, the people around Isabella believed her when she said she had been attacked and didn't want the police involved. When officers arrested her, she didn't resist. The police questioned her for hours, not knowing she had schizophrenia, and neither did she. During questioning, Isabella kept saying she was a 15-year-old girl named Samantha Gonzalez. The detectives didn't believe her and thought she was making it up. But Isabella was trapped in a delusion and truly believed she was someone else. She kept begging them to take her fingerprints, convinced it would prove she wasn't Isabella Guzman. As the questioning went on, the detectives asked Isabella how it felt to do what she had done. She seemed confused and asked what they meant. When they explained, she looked disgusted and firmly denied killing anyone. The officers didn't believe her. They accused her of pretending, warning her that a jury wouldn't fall for her story, especially since she had been found with blood on her clothes and a knife in her hand. Isabella, however, insisted they were wrong. When detectives showed her a photo of herself, she refused to admit it was her. Instead, she casually commented that the girl in the picture was pretty. When they told her it was her image, she denied it completely. No matter what proof they showed, she kept insisting they had the wrong person. To settle the matter, detectives brought in her father. When shown a picture of Isabella, he immediately recognized her and said her full name without hesitation. When asked if the woman sitting in the interrogation room was his daughter, he confirmed that she was. Even then, Isabella didn't hesitate. Despite her father identifying her, she remained lost in her delusion. truly believing she was someone else. The detectives kept pushing, but nothing they said could change her mind. Eventually, the questioning ended, and Isabella was taken to Arapahoe County Jail to await formal charges. Meanwhile, her stepfather, Ryan, was brought in for questioning. He tried to make sense of the unimaginable crime that had just happened. He explained that Isabella had been sent to live with her father at an early age because of behavioral issues. He also shared that things had gotten worse in the days leading up to the murder, though he never imagined Isabella was capable of something so terrible. He recalled that there hadn't been any issues that night. They had all been in the house together and Isabella had barely spoken. However, he knew she was angry with her mother, deeply upset, but he never thought she would actually do something so extreme. He told investigators about an email Isabella had sent to her mother, warning, "You will pay." He explained that Yun had been afraid of her daughter. Ryan explained that his wife had been on edge because of everything that had been happening with Isabella in the past few days. When detectives asked if things had recently gotten worse between Isabella and her mother, he confirmed that they had. He described how Isabella had been cursing at her mother and even spitting in her face. Then, there was the email. His wife had found it earlier that day. It was from Isabella, but she had addressed it to Cecilia. The name Cecilia turned out to be more than just a mistake. Isabella truly believed her mother was someone named Cecilia, and in her mind, this person had to die to save the world. That was the reason she gave for the murder. Whether it was a delusion or not, the fact remained. She had brutally killed Yunmi. Just days later, on August 30th, a judge ruled that Isabella would be held without bond on charges of first-degree murder. That afternoon, when it was time for her court appearance, she refused to leave her jail cell. Officers had to physically drag her into the courtroom. Shackled and restrained, she made strange faces at the camera, even pointing at her own eyes in a bizarre gesture. The unsettling moment was caught on video, and soon the footage spread everywhere. Years later, in 2020, when TikTok exploded in popularity, Isabella's courtroom footage resurfaced. Clips of her smirking in court were edited with the song "Sweet But Psycho," and just like that, she became an internet obsession. But instead of focusing on the brutal crime she had committed, people were more interested in her appearance. They flooded the comments with remarks about her looks, some even romanticizing her actions. It was as if the horror of what she had done was being overshadowed by the viral nature of the videos. Meanwhile, back in court, Isabella's case continued. She remained in jail without bond until June 2014. That's when the truth about her schizophrenia finally came to light. During a hearing, Isabella entered a plea of not guilty because of insanity. A doctor testified that she had been suffering from schizophrenia, and that, in the weeks leading up to the murder, she had been experiencing uncontrollable delusions and hallucinations. The doctor explained that Isabella genuinely believed her mother was an evil woman named Cecilia who needed to die to save the world. She wasn't just making this up. This was her reality. Her ex-boyfriend even testified that, before the murder, she had been saying things that made no sense, further proving that something was seriously wrong. But regardless of her mental state, one fact remained. Yunmi was gone, and nothing could bring her back. It became clear that Isabella was living in a completely different reality, even with the people closest to her, like her ex-boyfriend. As the case unfolded, everyone, including the district attorney, recognized that she was not mentally well at the time of the murder. Because of this, her plea of not guilty because of insanity went uncontested. During the hearing, a state doctor testified that Isabella had paranoid schizophrenia. He explained that she suffered from hallucinations, often stared into space for long periods, and even had conversations with people who weren't there. The district attorney stated that he asked the court to accept her plea to avoid a lengthy trial, since medical experts had determined she was no longer a danger to herself or others. The district attorney explained that there was no set time frame for Isabella's stay at the mental institution. It could last a year, 2 years, or even the rest of her life, depending on her condition. With that in mind, the judge ruled that she would be sent to the Colorado Mental Health Institute in Pueblo for an indefinite period. Her release would only be considered if doctors determined that she was no longer a danger to society. However, in a surprising turn of events, Isabella began petitioning for her release just 7 years later, in November 2020. For the first time, she spoke publicly about the murder and shared her side of the story. In an interview, she claimed that she had been a victim of abuse while growing up. She said that her parents, who raised her as Jehovah's Witnesses, mistreated her, and things only got worse when she chose to leave the religion at 14. She also spoke about the murder itself, saying that it had been an incredibly difficult experience for her as well. Shockingly, she even pointed out injuries she had sustained that day, showing scars on her hands as proof. In the interview, Isabella insisted that she hadn't been herself when she committed the crime. She claimed that she had since been restored to full health and no longer suffered from any mental illness. Another shocking claim came when Isabella revealed that she had been sexually assaulted 3 times while staying at the Colorado Mental Health Institute. She said he tricked her into a storage room by telling her she could pick out some clothes. Once the other patient left, he shut the door behind her. Isabella said she reported the assaults to hospital police in 2015 and wanted to press charges. However, when CBS looked into it, they discovered that the district attorney's office in Pueblo never received a case related to her claims. When Isabella met with the DA's office, she was allegedly told that how the report had been written would make it difficult to move forward with charges. She was advised to reach out to the American Civil Liberties Union, and she said she planned to do so. Currently, the Colorado Department of Human Services has refused to release any information about the case, leaving many questions unanswered. It's unclear if more details will ever come to light. Despite everything, Isabella remains in a mental institution. Over the years, she has repeatedly petitioned for her release, but so far, she has only been granted limited freedoms. In 2021, she was allowed to leave the facility for group and individual therapy sessions, but she is still closely monitored with a GPS tracking device. Right now, it doesn't seem like she will be fully released anytime soon. It has been 10 years since she brutally murdered her mother, Yunmi Hoy. Isabella now claims she is stable, fully recovered, and capable of managing her schizophrenia. But should that be enough for her to regain freedom? Or should she remain institutionalized or even imprisoned for a longer period? No matter what you think about Isabella's future, one thing is clear: her mother's murder was tragic and brutal. The thought of being killed by your child is truly heartbreaking. Cases like this are never easy to talk about. In the end, whatever happens next should focus on justice for Yunmi. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this case, so let's discuss it in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you find this video interesting. It helps the channel grow and brings more true crime cases to light. That's it for today's video. Thank you for watching.